Hello, world history. This is Miss Corey. Welcome to U10-L2 Intro to North and South America. Okay, this is a longer slideshow today, so I'm going to talk a little fast, but do let us know if you have any questions. So, congratulations, you have completed the first full unit of semester 2, which was Unit 9, the Renaissance. So, here's questions for you. How did Unit 9 go for you? And do you have any questions about how the class is structured? Especially for those of you who are new to us in second semester. If you don't have any questions, that's okay. Just type none. Your job, you're going to watch this ed puzzle. Anything that's in blue text is going to be a question that I'm going to ask you on the ed puzzle that I want you to answer directly on the ed puzzle. Make sure you're also following along with your study guide because anything in red text is going to be a vocab word, so make sure you write it down. If you have any questions, please let us know. We are here to help you. Learning targets. Analyze the factors that led to the emergence and expansion of the multi-ethnic Aztec and Inca empires in the Americas. Today, we're going to focus more on the Aztec side. Inca empire we'll learn about in a few days. So we could spend a whole year on pre-1500s America and still not get to everything. There is just so much. So we are going to focus primarily on three big civilizations this unit, that being the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. So what do you think of when you hear Maya, Aztec, Inca, or Mesoamerica? So you might think of their cities, such as Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is really famous because it was built on top of a mountain. If anyone's been there, let me know. I have not been there. Sounds fun though. You might think of the step pyramids. They were also very popular. You might think of their artwork and also their writing system because it was a glyph writing system. We'll talk about that today. You might think of the conquistadors that came over from Europe and pretty much destroyed everything. You might think of the Mayan calendar, or you might think of the tools they used because obsidian was very popular to use in North and South America before Europeans arrived. So here's a timeline. We have seen this timeline before on the European side. Now this is a timeline more for like North and South America. So we are going to start with the Olmec civilization. That is the most ancient civilization in Mesoamerica. So they were living from about 1200 to 400 BCE. There's also the Zapotec people. I won't cover them today, but they were from about 900 BCE to 700 CE. There's also the Chavin people. I won't cover them today as well, but they were from 900 to 250 BCE. There's the Nazca people. They were from 200 BCE to 600 CE. I won't cover them today as well. There's the Moche people, who I also won't cover. I know there's a lot of good things that I won't cover. I used to cover them, but the slideshow got too long, so that's why I cut some of them out. Then you have the Maya people. I will talk about them. They are from 250 to about 900 CE. Do note with this asterisk right here, it's not like the Mayan people just like their empire fell at 900. What happened is they became like decentralized, so they didn't necessarily have like a centralized government anymore, and they broke up into more like villages and smaller communities. We'll also talk about the Aztec people. So they were from about 1300 to 1521 CE. And then the Inca people, who were from 1438 to 1533 CE. We'll talk about the Inca on another day. So Mesoamerica, what is that word? What does it mean? So Mesoamerica is a historic region on North America where groups of indigenous people live today and also in the past. And it includes very famous groups such as the Olmec, the Mayans, and the Aztecs. So you can see here on this map, so here's like North America, here's South America. Mesoamerica was right here in this more brown shaded area. So here's a zoomed in map. This is a modern map of indigenous tribes and where they would have lived historically and still today. As you can see here, we could spend a really long time talking about all of these diverse tribes. But of course, we don't have the time. I know, it's sad. All right, another thing to note is Central America. So you can see that Mesoamerica and Central America overlap quite a bit. So Central America is still part of like the North American continent, but it's really the bridge between North America and South America. And Central America includes modern-day countries such as Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. There's also the Sierra Madre Mountains. That is a major geographical feature that runs throughout Mesoamerica, including much of Mexico. So the Sierra Madre Mountains are a part of the Rocky Mountain system, but that's just what they kind of call it in Mexico. So you can see here, here's a bunch of mountains, here's some more mountains, here's some more mountains, lots of mountains. Also lots of volcanoes as well. All right, and then you also have South America. So we won't talk about the Inca today, but just to show you on a map of where the Inca people were, they would be right here in modern day Peru. All right, so when did humans arrive to the Americas? That is an excellent question because there's a lot of debate around when exactly did the first humans come. So, first, let's talk about the Ice Age. So, the Ice Age was this time period between about 1.9 million to 10,000 BCE. So, a long, long time ago. It was a very cold climate, which meant that sheets of ice formed across the Americas landscapes. Glaciers would freeze up water. That would cause a very big drop in the sea levels. Like today, we have the opposite, right? So, glaciers are melting, sea levels are rising. During the Ice Age, it was the opposite. Glaciers would freeze up the water, sea levels would go down. With the lower sea levels, that would create land bridges between what is now modern day Russia and Alaska. And this land bridge is called Beringia. So here is a map of what the Ice Age looked like. So you can see everything kind of in this whitish blue color would be ice, including us in Minnesota. Yeah, look at us, covered with ice. Then you will see up here, so this is Alaska, that's Russia. There would actually be a land bridge, so people could just walk across from Russia to Alaska. Of course, you can't do that today, but in the Ice Age, it was possible. There are other ways that humans came to the Americas, one of them being by boat. This was especially true for people from Oceania. Oceania are the islands by New Zealand and Australia. And it's really a debate of when humans first arrive in the Americas, but historians and anthropologists believe somewhere between about 40,000 BCE to about 10,000 BCE. All right, let's start off with our first civilization, which is the Olmecs. So the Olmec people, they lived about 1200 to 400 BCE, so before Common Era. And they were located at the tropical coast of the Atlantic in Mexico. So they're kind of on the southern edge of the Gulf of Mexico, right here in this purple area. And they had a civilization that is based in the modern day city called San Lorenzo, which I know it's a little hard to see, but it's this little white dot right there. And the Olmec people had a population there of about 10,000 to 18,000 people. That's really large for an ancient civilization. So for the Olmec people, religion was really the main focus, especially in their city centers. So they would have pyramids, they would have monumental mounds, they would have raised platforms for gods. Elite people would show their eliteness and richness by having their houses close to the religious temples. They also had a system of writing, but the really unique thing about the system of writing that it is still undeciphered today. So if you ever want to become a historical linguistic and undecipher this or decipher this language, that would be awesome. So here's more of a zoomed in map. You can see right here in this purple area. That's where they lived. So the Olmec people were also polytheistic, meaning that they worshipped multiple gods. So their gods were unique, as in that their gods had both male and female characteristics about them. Their gods were also a mix of animal and human characteristics, and rulers were typically associated with the jaguar. So this little figurine right here would be a mix between a human and an eagle. I know it's a little hard to tell, but this is supposed to be like the beak of the eagle, like right here. And then there's like the feather on the eagle. So priests and shamans were also a very important role in the Olmec civilization because they were believed to tell the future. They're the ones who would cure the sick. And they would also believe to be transformed into animals, specifically like crocodiles, which this is supposed to be a crocodile right here, snakes, and sharks. They also had astronomers. Those astronomers would create calendars for rainy and dry seasons, and they would also make kind of like calendars for when human sacrifices and blood rituals were supposed to occur. Um, so bloodletting, by the way, is not necessarily killing a person. It's when like a person either like cuts themselves and like bleeds, or someone else cuts someone else and they bleed. It is all to please the gods. So human sacrifice, that was a major role in religion for some of the native indigenous tribes in Mesoamerica. So human sacrifice is when priests kill humans in a sacrificial ritual to please the gods. It is something that's usually done in a huge celebration. It's not like done behind the scenes in like a back alley or something like that. Everyone in the city comes together at like the city square, and there's a huge celebration, typically done on an altar in front of the public, and it typically revolves around the weather and the harvest seasons. Here is a picture of what is believed to be a sacrificial altar from the Olmec civilization. They're also very famous because they would carve these giant heads made out of stone. So the Olmec civilization was thought to be carve these faces in the likes of famous rulers or famous ball game players. You're like, ball game players? Yeah, the Olmec had this very popular sport. It's called the Olmec ball game, and it's somewhat similar to racquetball in that there's like a constant hitting back and forth of the ball against the wall. There would be two teams, and they would also have to try to throw this ball through one of the hoops here. Historians are really unsure of the exact rules. Today, there is a modern version of this game called Ulama, and if you do the video choice, one of the videos is about a ball game. And here's what their stadiums look like. So you can see right here, like people would sit here, and then they would play their little ball games in their little coliseum thing. Here's more of a zoomed in picture of what the Olmec heads look like. You can just see the massive scale of them. So it's really unknown how the civilization fell. There are a lot of monuments that were defaced or destroyed. So historians think that military conquest or social overthrowing of leaders occurred. So something violent happened that people would destroy, like the monuments of the Olmecs. Another important thing to talk about is obsidian. So obsidian is a volcanic rock used throughout the world. It can be easily broken, and when someone breaks the rock, there's typically sharp edges. It is used especially in the pre-Bronze Age. So if you think back to Unit 1, if you were with me, that would be like before 3300 BCE in Europe, Africa, and Asia, and they're typically used for sharp tools and arrowheads. So you're like, why are you talking about that now? Yes. So obsidian was still very important to North and South America, like up until the 1500s, so about 500 years ago, because obsidian was used before like European contact for cutting tools as well as arrowheads. The reason why obsidian was still used, even though like Europe, Africa, and Asia had ditched it, like 5,000 years beforehand, is because there was a lack of technology in North and South America to melt hard metals, such as iron. So here's what obsidian looks like. So that's just kind of what it looks like laying around. That's obsidian kind of like chipped away a little bit. You can see it looks like just this glassy little orb thing. And then once you chip it away, it makes these super sharp edges like you see here and you see right here. All right, next let's talk about the Mayans. So the first thing we got to talk about is the Yucatan Peninsula. And that is located right here. So that is the peninsula in modern day Mexico, northern Belize, and Guatemala. And it makes the southern edge of the Gulf of Mexico. And that is the main location that the Mayans and the Aztecs lived. So let's go back to our timeline real quick. So we talked about the Olmecs before. Now we're down here on the Mayans. And then you'll see right after the Mayans would be the Aztecs. So the Mayans, it's a little confusing on putting a date of when the Mayan civilization like ended. So the Mayans lived from about 250 to 900 CE. Now, in about 900 CE is when there wasn't necessarily like one big capital anymore, and the Mayan people kind of split off into smaller little towns and cities and groups and stuff like that. But technically, they lived until about the 1600s. But of course, there are still Mayan people today. Let's make that very clear. Okay. So note that the capital in the golden age of the Mayans was from 250 to about 900 CE. So 900 CE is when the capital, Chichen Itza, was abandoned. And after about 900 CE, the Mayans were scattered into smaller communities. Today, there are still Mayan people that are still around, especially in southern Mexico and parts of northern Guatemala as well. So here's more of a zoomed in map of where the Mayan people lived and still live today. So there are kind of three eras to the Mayans. There's the pre-classic era. So that was before Mayan civilization was really united. That was between about 2500 BCE until 250 CE. There was the classic era. So that would be really the height of the Mayan Empire. That was from about 250 to 900 CE. And the post-classic era, which was after all the people, like the Mayan people, kind of split into those smaller communities. So that was from about 900 to 1600 CE. So the Mayans had something called glyphs. Glyphs are symbols that the Mayans used for the writing system. And glyphs were the most advanced writing system in all of Mesoamerica. So this is a picture of what glyphs look like in the Mayan society. So symbols, which would be like each one of these little boxes, could either stand for whole words or just syllables. They also had something called codex. So codex were these bark paper books where Mayans would write down their very like sacred or important documents. So they didn't have paper like we just talked about, like with Gutenberg and the printing press. It wasn't that kind of paper. They didn't have that. They had to use bark off of trees. And a lot of these documents were historical documents. So either talking about like their leaders or wars or maybe religious things. So there's kind of a tragic history behind these codex. So when the Spanish conquistadors, so those are the Spanish people who came over to the Americas to conquer, they came to North America in about the 1500s and they burned all of the codex. So that means that the Spanish destroyed all of the Mayan histories. So those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of records and documents were burned. Why did this happen? So, Spanish Catholic priests typically came over from Europe with the conquistadors, and they saw these right here as being works of the devil. And there are only 3 intact Mayan codex that still survive today. You can find one in Madrid, one in Chicago, and one in Mexico City. All right, now we go on to the Aztec. So you're going to learn a lot more about the Aztec when you watch U10-L3 and U10-L4. Those are 2 videos. Don't worry, they're not me. You don't have to listen to my voice. They're actually from the History Channel, so the same people that make your textbook. You're going to answer the questions directly on the Ed puzzle, and I will be scoring on what questions you get right or wrong. And the video tells you a little bit about the Mayan civilization too, but it's mostly about the Aztecs. I'm going to share just some information with you about the Aztecs because if you like watch the video, might be a little lost without some background information. So yeah. So the Aztecs. So they were from about 1300 to 1521. So they were after the Mayans. Their capital is in Tenochtitlan. So Tenochtitlan is right here, kind of in like southerny, middly Mexico. And it is located in the Valley of Mexico. So the Valley of Mexico is a high plateau surrounded by mountains and volcanoes, and it is the current modern day location of Mexico City. So here's more of a zoomed in map of where the Valley of Mexico is. So right there, right there. So here is a artist rendition of what Tenochtitlan looked like before the Spanish came and conquered and destroyed pretty much everything. So as you can see, it is a island that is floating in the middle of a lake. That's pretty neat, isn't it? You can see the city grid. You can see there's roads coming in and out of the city. You can see the mountains in the background as well. Here's a modern day picture of where Tenochtitlan would have been. So this is modern day Mexico. As you can see, there's a lot of buildings and a lot of houses. Like it's almost kind of crazy to look at. You can see roads still. You still can see the mountains kind of right here in the background and right here as well. So the Aztecs, they built their civilization upon 5 lakes. And you can see the 5 lake map right here. So this civilization of Aztecs was formed after 3 of the cities joined forces in something called the Triple Alliance. So Tenochtitlan people, the Texcoco people, and the Chalcopan people joined forces and made themselves into like one group called the Aztecs. So Lake Texcoco, which is right here, is really the main lake of all of these lakes, and that is where the capital of Tenochtitlan was built, right here on this island. So here is another map of Lake Texcoco. So you can see the island right here. This is all really that's left of the lakes. Mexico City, again, is built over all these lakes, so pretty much all that's left are like ponds. So you'll learn more about the Aztecs in the next 2 lessons. So let's wrap it up. Today we learned about Mesoamerica, Ice Age, Beringia, Olmecs, including polytheistic and human sacrifices, Obsidian, Yucatan Peninsula, a little bit about the Mayans and the Aztecs, including glyphs, codex, Valley of Mexico, Triple Alliance, and Lake Texcoco. Next up, we're going to do U10-L3, the Aztecs Part 1, U10-L4, the Aztecs Part 2. Then you'll meet me back here for U10-L5, Intro to the Incas. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. We're happy to help. Thanks for watching. Bye.